I just wanted to thank you for joining us this evening. I also want to thank Council President Scott Peters and Councilmember Donna Fry for co-hosting this event tonight. They've both been very important partners in bringing meaningful reform to the city's pension system, and I appreciate the work of both Donna and Scott. I want to also talk about the fact that this is really one of the cornerstones of the entire reform effort that we have had as we've moved forward as a city. And I think all of you are probably aware of the financial burden that the current system has had on our existing finances and the problem that it's caused on that. And what we're going to do tonight is actually share information about a pension reform proposal that's going to council next Monday, next Tuesday. I was only off by a day. It's going to go to council next Tuesday. What we're asking them to do is to pass the ballot language and to put it on the November ballot, and that's really what this is about. This is a proposal that includes recommendations that I proposed. It also includes recommendations that the council members have brought forward, and we have put those together, and it, I think, is deserving of support. And I think it's a good pension system. I think it's a solid, fair pension system, and it's one that'll help us out of some of the financial problems that we're in. In 2005, I don't think we really understood the full complexity of all the issues that we were facing, especially in the financial arena. And after outside auditors and outside consultants came in, they really made it clear the depth of the issues that we were facing, both with our pension, but also some other issues. And changing that system has been a priority for me, and I know it's been a priority in terms of reform for many of the other council members. And once again, I want to thank Council President Peters and Councilmember Fry for being part of trying to fix many of those issues so that as we move ahead, we have a sustainable budget that will allow us to continue to provide services and actually enhance that over a period of time. You know, when I think about the process we've gone to get here, it has really been a cooperative effort. It's been one that none of us got exactly what we wanted, and I know Councilman Member Peters and I met a bunch of times, moving back and forth. Council Member Fry came in and helped us with some of these issues, but what I think we got out of it was we crafted something that presents a reasonable solution that is going to be important as we move forward, and I'm happy to support the proposal, and I want to look forward to asking all of you to do that. In just a moment, I'm going to ask Council President Peters and Councilmember Fry to speak, and then Jay Goldstone, the city's chief operating officer, is going to make his presentation on the pension system, what we have now, what we're proposing, and we'll also talk about the amount of money we'll save and where that money would go. I know there's been complaints that other cities are able to do more in terms of their pensions, but I think that we're seeing the tip of the iceberg right now. We have been a highly publicized example of public sector employee pension systems, and how the fact that they're underfunded to a great extent, and we're reaching some pretty dangerous areas in many cities and many counties and many state and local governments. And I think that we're going to encounter that more and more as you look at other cities, and I think other cities are going to be looking for ways to make their models more solution friendly or more financial friendly for the areas. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Jay Goldstone, or excuse me, we're passing out cards. Now, will we do this at the budget forums? Write your questions down on cards. We'll have time to answer questions after Jay talks. And the reason we do that is sometimes people like to make speeches, but this is really my forum. If other people want to hold their forums, when I say my forum, I mean Council President Peters' forum, Councilmember Fry's forum. I'm not used to the three of us being together holding a forum. But we would prefer to answer a lot of questions instead of having some people talk for a long time asking questions. So if you'll write them down, we'll get to as many as we possibly can. So I'm going to ask Council President Peters to come up, and then Councilmember Fry, and then we'll turn it over to Jay Goldstone to actually go through the program.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks for having us out tonight. Pension reform is a vital part of putting the city's financial house in order, and I want to just reiterate that the Mayor and the City Council are committed partners in the effort to bring the kind of financial reform and discipline that has been lacking in the city. San Diego was the first city in the nation to recognize and grapple with millions of dollars in unfunded pension and health care liabilities. And again, I believe we're at the forefront with these kind of pension reforms that will still allow the city to attract and retain quality workers while protecting taxpayers and and reducing costs in the long run. While San Diego is a great place to live and work, we have to remain competitive with other government agencies. We've continued to lose highly skilled employees to other cities within San Diego County, and they're not leaving because the weather's better in Chula Vista. They are leaving for higher pay and better health benefits. The compromise proposed by Mayor Sanders and I strikes a proper balance between remaining competitive, I believe, and protecting taxpayers and employees. We really only have one shot at getting this right. If we set the benchmarks too low, it's going to be nearly impossible to raise them up to a more reasonable level. And if we set them too high, I don't think we will have achieved the goals that we've set for saving money in the long term. The compromise does a few things. It eliminates what I think is an outdated retirement age of 55, raises it to 60, sets appropriate levels of compensation for employees who retire after then, lowers the cap on total compensation, and eliminates one of two current retirement programs for employees. However, we hope and we believe that this still provides a reasonable and fair level of retirement pay for future employees. Two quick words of thanks. I want to thank the IBA's office, Office of Independent Budget Analyst. I see Penny Takati's here. She worked very hard with the City Council to come up with a range of different approaches to this as we struggle with how we might save money going into the future. And I think she did a great job and was great support to us. And I want to thank the Mayor for being willing to talk about this. I know he was often exasperated by having to deal with the City Council, and as am I sometimes. But I think he really showed a lot of leadership in coming to. I think we all came to understand each other's positions. It's probably like any compromise. No one got everything that they wanted, but I think we came up with something that's really good for the city, and I do thank you, Mayor, for all the effort you put in. Also, we've also compromised on suit color tonight, I noticed, so we're in full agreement. And now I guess we're going to turn it over to Councilmember Donna Fry.
And of course, as normal, I didn't get that memo. What can I say? Story of my life. But in any case, first of all, I want to thank you all. This is really nice to be out here. You have a wonderful library, but I'm also glad to see the fact that people actually showed up. It is summer, and there's a whole lot of people that have a whole lot of other things to do, but we think this is really important, and I'm really glad to see Carl and Sherry and Bill, and there's a whole lot of other candidates for City Council, which is great to see them. One who has already won. So anyways, but what I wanted to add to this discussion is first of all to say, I know how hard the mayor has worked on this, and that's why I thought it was important to show up tonight and show my support for that. But I also want to caution people that while this certainly is a step in the right direction, and it is, the fact of the matter is it does not address the current pension problems that we have. This is an unfortunate situation that we have not been able to come to some sort of agreement with our labor unions. It had always been my hope for the past many years, and since I ran for mayor back in 2004, that we could address some of the current benefits and roll those back a bit so that we could keep the current pension plan and actually get the dollars in check. That has not happened, and unfortunately it does not look like it is going to happen, and that is most unfortunate. As I've said to many people, this will not save the world, this will not save the city, but I got to tell you, it's going to stop it from getting worse, because right now we are in a situation where we have a structural deficit, we have some very serious financial problems, and this needs to be done to begin to address those. The amount of savings, and I'm sure Jay will tell you that, the savings are going to come in small chunks over many, many years. They'll be cumulative, but we have to do something now. Like you said, you might not be able to save the world, but we can stop it from getting worse. And as you can tell, I'm not always a cheerleader for the mayor or for Mr. Peters. But I will say that in this particular case, I certainly will give them my support, because I think that they have both worked very, very hard. There have been many, many compromises, and it would be my strongest hope that my friends in labor would potentially think about another way to deal with the current pension plan in order to address some of the existing problems. And you can... And I'll leave it at that, but in any case, we'll bring out, I guess we're bringing out Jay Goldstone next. I guess it's your show. Jay Goldstone, who is now the Chief Operating Officer, also did not receive the memo tonight, but that's okay too. So it's all yours, Jay.
Thank you, Councilmember Frye. I have a few slides that I'll walk you through in terms of trying to cover what we're proposing in the new plan. There we go. Obviously, you've probably heard a lot of discussion of the need for pension reform. And essentially, it boils down to the fact that the current plan and the current structure is too expensive. The city was paying somewhere around $54–55 million several years ago, and today our bill is $161 million. And there's no new revenue sources to pay for it, so it's coming out of existing revenue streams, which means it's coming out of existing services. And you probably have felt that through some of the budget cuts that have been made over the years. But right now, an employee who starts at age 35 and works to age 65, so that's the example we're using. Under the current plan, they have a combined defined benefit plan, and I'll talk a little bit about what a defined benefit plan is. And we have what's called SPSP, which is the Supplemental Employee Pension Savings Plan. And the combination of people contribute fully to the SPSP and as participating in the defined benefit plan at age 55, so with 20 years of service, they could retire on 67% of their current base pay, or their pay at the time of retirement. And if they work for 30 years and retire at age 65, they could retire on 119% of pay, combination of the defined benefit and the SPSP account. And of course, the conclusion is that the current plan is not financially sustainable for the city, and the costs will only grow over time. So when the mayor first proposed pension reform, there were several objectives, and some of those objectives have been added to through this compromise proposal, but clearly, first and foremost, we want to eliminate the incentive and subsidy for early retirement. The way the current pension structure is, somebody is rewarded for retiring earlier, so retiring at age 55, versus the incentive of trying to work till 60 or 65. And one of the things that we've learned, and as the mayor mentioned, you're going to see this throughout the state and probably throughout the country, people are living longer. And when these pension plans were maybe first created, somebody would work their career, retire at 65, and to say bluntly, probably pass away at 5 years, 6 years later. Well, now they're living 30, 40 years beyond retirement, and these plans aren't structured to be able to sustain that. We definitely now want to eliminate the ability to retire at age 55, and in the proposal, that would be one of the things. So you couldn't retire, actually start drawing retirement benefit before age 60. Obviously lower the costs, and by pushing out the retirement age, having people work longer, would result in a lower cost to the city and thus ultimately to the taxpayers. Core fundamental is that it secures the fiscal reform and stability for the city that the mayor has been working for ever since he's taken office. And yet, with all this, and I think everyone's mentioned the fact that we believe very strongly that this still provides a fair and reasonable retirement benefit at age 65 for those who retire. And it creates a more equitable sharing of investments and risk between the city and the employees, where under the current pension plan, all that investment risk under the defined benefit plan accrues just to the city. So if there's gains on investments, the city makes out, and if there are losses, and what we've seen with the market this current year, the city has to bear that risk. So what are the elements of the plan? It's only going to apply to new employees hired on or after July 1st, 2009. So as Councilmember Fry mentions, all current employees are under the current pension plan. And at this point in time, given the decisions in the court, without an agreement with labor or from labor, those benefits will remain for the current employees. This new proposal does not apply to lifeguards or sworn personnel in the police and fire department. They're covered under a public safety pension plan, and so this new proposal does not apply to this group of employees. Again, we believe it establishes reasonable and affordable defined benefits and also establishes a defined contribution component as part of the employee retirement plan. So what does it mean in terms of a defined benefit? And hopefully everyone can see that. Try to make these charts a little bit larger. A defined benefit plan essentially is, as it says, is your benefits at retirement are predetermined. And it's predetermined based essentially on three factors. It's your age at retirement, it's your years of service, and it's your final compensation. And so you know coming in today when you're working that that's the definition you're working under. If the market makes more money or loses money, that has no bearing on the level of your retirement. The city bears all the upside as well as the risk. So you can see under the current plan, and these are examples of some of the multipliers, you could retire at age 55 and you get 2.5%. And what that means, just so you, and I won't walk through each example, but if you worked 30 years, you'd get 30 times 2.5%. So you get 75% of your single highest year, and that's your retirement. So in that example, you get 75% just from the defined benefit plan. And so if you work till age 65, you get 2.8 times those 30 years or 40 years with a benefit cap of 90%. That's costing the city right now on average, as well as the employee, about 10%. So of everyone's payroll, the city contributes about 10%, the employee contributes about 10% for that benefit. What we're proposing is to lower those multipliers or factors. And you can see at age 55, the factor is 0, or essentially it goes away. You will not even be eligible to retire at age 55. The earliest you can retire is 60, and it's a 2%. So again, if you work for 20 or 30 years, you'd get either 40 or 60% of your retirement, of your salary, and it would grow up to 2.6 times your years of service. One other change, or two changes to this, is that we are capping that benefit at 80%. So if somebody were to work 35, 40 years, they conceivably could get 80% of their salary from the defined benefit. And instead of a single year, it's going to be based on a 3-year average. And it's 3 years out of your last 5. So it would obviously be the highest 3 years. Typically, that is your last 3 years as your salary grows, as you change positions. But it also avoids some games playing where somebody may work at a higher level salary for 2 or 3 years, part of their mid-career, and then go into a lower position their last 5, 6, 7 years. This would preclude that from happening, that it's, as I say, 3 out of your last 5 years. And you can see the cost to the city and to the employee drops to about 7.5% of payroll. So there's a savings to the city as well as a savings to the employee. And that's the defined benefit component. The defined contribution component that we are proposing also has, it's a mandatory where the employee would contribute 1.25% of pay after tax, pre-tax, so it lowers their taxable income, and the city would match that 1.25%. Those funds would be put into an account managed by SD-SERS, which is the city's retirement plan. So it would be pooled so that the employee has the opportunity of earning a higher rate of return than they would normally if they're managing the funds themselves. All the money accrues to the benefit of the employee. And if the employee leaves employment early, that money would go to them. There's a 5-year vesting. And if the employee, upon retirement, that money would be pulled out from SD-SERS and rolled over into an IRA, a 401k, some other pre-tax or investment vehicle, or they could just pull the money out. And there's an assumed rate of return in our proposal of 8% by SD-SERS. If SD-SERS earns more than that, then the employee benefits from it. All those benefits accrue to the employee, and if SD-SERS earns less than that, then that's a risk that the employee will bear. So this is sort of, it's a busy table, but it sort of shows what we've been talking about, this replacement value. So there again at the top, it assumes somebody's hired at age 35. They might, obviously they could be hired at age 25. But we assume hired at age 35 and retires at age 65 is in the first table up there. And you can see where an employee right now could retire at 119%, and under our proposal, it would be at 83.7%. And if they retire at age 62, they could still retire at over 100% under the current proposal and 65% under our proposal. And you can see the breakdown between the defined benefit piece as well as either the SPSP or the defined contribution plan that we're proposing. And then again at age 55, they could currently retire with 67%, and under our proposal, they could not retire and start drawing a benefit. Somebody could leave employment at age 55, do other things, leave their money in, and then when they reach age 60, start drawing retirement benefit, but they could not start drawing it earlier. And again, then the summary sort of at the bottom, you can see the city's contribution rate and the employee's contribution rate drops from a total between SPSP and the defined benefit or the defined contribution and the defined benefit plan from 15.9, almost 16%, down to 8.75. That's where the savings are coming in for both the employee as well as the city. So there's clearly a benefit, and you can see from the asterisks at the bottom of that page where the employee's net take-home pay under this does increase, which then would allow the employee to take those kinds of savings and contribute them into their 401k on top of what their 1.25% that they're contributing. Here's sort of a summary of the projected savings. That under this proposal, if this plan were in existence today, or put another way, if 100% of the current workforce was covered under this new proposed plan, the city would save about $8.2 million a year in the defined benefit and about $15.4 million savings out of the defined contribution proposal. There'd be a little bit higher costs in our long-term disability program that we're projecting, and that would have a net savings to the city of about $22.5 million. Now, as Councilmember Fry mentioned, it won't happen today because not everyone's going to be covered by this. So this is going to have to gradually be phased in. We estimate that there's about 300 or so employees that turn over every year. And assuming we fill all of those positions, then it's going to take some time for us to fully realize this $22 million worth of savings. But our projections are that in the first year, once fully implemented, that we would save about $500,000, and then incrementally an additional $1 million per year each year thereafter until fully implemented. So you can see it would be about 22 to 25 years before we would realize this full benefit. And again, assuming that there's roughly about a 300 position turnover each year. Again, so if I can just summarize, again, it applies to employees hired after July 1 of 2009. It does not apply to sworn police and fire personnel and to lifeguards. The SD-SERS would be the administrator of both plans. They're the current administrator of our defined benefit plan. They would then basically manage this tier 2 for the defined benefit, and they would manage the funds on the defined contribution. We have a target retirement or replacement of 80%, down from the 90% on the defined benefit, and increase the retirement age. And all contributions, and that's one of the differences, but all contributions would be in pre-tax dollars. Right now, the SPSP program is in after-tax dollars, which then creates very little incentive for the employees to keep their money in SPSP because they've already been taxed on it. So after a year, after the city matches, they take the money out, and then when it comes time to retirement, they may or may not have those funds available. It will absolutely result in more take-home pay for the employee. And as I mentioned, the employee can contribute up to the legal IRS limits and federal tax law limits to their 401k or 457, which is a public employee retirement provisions within the IRS codes. So they can contribute the difference between the 1.25 and the legal limits to add to their retirement benefit. And it clearly achieves a cost reduction for both the city and the employee, and it reduces the city's exposure to investment risk. So what needs to happen? As was mentioned by the mayor, next Tuesday, we'll be going back before the city council to ask them to place this on the ballot. They will have to adopt a resolution to take that action. We are currently in meet and confer with the bargaining groups. We suspect we will be concluding those and reporting back to City Council. And as mentioned, it's going to happen on the 22nd of July. Then this would be placed, if this goes through, it will be placed on the November 4th ballot for the residents and citizens of San Diego to decide if this makes sense for the city. So with that, I think we're ready for questions.
I've got quite a few questions here, so I appreciate that fact. And Scott or Donna, if you want to join at any point, please let me know. And Jay, I may have to call on you in a couple of days. I'm just going to read them right off just as you wrote them. A couple of them are a little hard to read. You're obviously doctors. But how does the proposed pension payouts compare to the typical large corporation pension payouts as a percentage of pre-retirement income? I don't have a clue. All I can tell you is that almost every corporation that I've seen in the private sector is going to only 401ks, and I think we only need to look at the defined benefit plans. There may not be many left. I don't really know that. I know I have a friend who worked for United Airlines. He just turned 60, and he found that his retirement system was worth 25% of what it used to be worth because that's what they downgraded it to. And they don't have a defined benefit plan anymore. So we're trying to save a plan that I think is fair to city employees, but is also fair to the taxpayers. And I think you're going to see more and more 401ks, and I think that's an important point. Is the proposed plan modeled after any other municipalities? No. Yes? There's two states that have had plans that are somewhat similar, and they've received uneven results. So I want to be clear about that. Alaska and Oregon. I don't know of another municipality that has this, but I do still believe, and I think when you start talking to people around the state of California, you're going to find this is a very common issue, that these pension systems have been underfunded and are going to get more underfunded as we move ahead. Does the pension proposal have any impact on employees on the city's payroll today? Will their pension payouts be reduced from what they would have been? This does not impact current employees. And my understanding from the lawsuits we've been in, from everybody that I've talked to, is you vest in a pension system the day you start the job. And that cannot be changed without a vote of the membership. Now, we've been to court on this several times, and it's on appeal. But I think that what we have found is that we have not been successful with any of these benefits getting them restored in the courts. And in fact, we've lost all the cases, and as I said, it's on appeal now. Now, there is one thing that's being done right now, and that is in our agreements for this year's POA, Police Officers Association, and Firefighters PACs, they agreed to let us sue them to find out what the legality is in terms of buying back years of service, which is no longer available after 2005, and also the drop program, which allows people to retire and then work for 5 more years and build a cumulative bank. The current labor groups say that those are vested benefits, part of the retirement system. I've maintained that those are bargained benefits and we can change them, but we've kind of come to loggerheads, and I think it's going to be something for the courts to address. Scott?
I just want to correct you because I think you just made a little misstatement that I think would confuse people. It's actually,
I would certainly never do that.
and I'm just being a little bit of a lawyer here, which I used to do, hope to do again someday maybe. People don't actually vest the day that they come into to their job. What happens is, though, because it still takes 10 years in most cases to vest, what happens is public employees are entitled to the terms of the program the day they start work. So once Bob Dingman comes to work for the city, okay, whatever the terms are of the pension program at that time are the ones he's going to benefit by once he vests 10 years later, when he's in his late 60s. So it's actually a little bit different from that. And what we found too, which is confusing, that I like to mention is that the public sector provides different protections for its employees than private sector companies. And a lot of people, like United Airlines, I have a friend who's a pilot at United Airlines, and they cut his pension, and we're often asked, well, why can't you do that? Well, that's been the whole debate in court with Mr. Aguirre's lawsuits, is that in the public sector you get protected. And you can't take away those. I think it's pretty clear now, you can't take away those benefits. And that's why some people are confused, because they heard it happen in the private sector. It's just a different situation. So our strategy there, under the mayor's leadership and the council's, with the council's partnership, has been to fund those benefits. If we can't cut them, we should fund them. Fair enough?
Thank you, counsel. Scott's absolutely right. I always say vest on the first day, and what I mean is adopt the pension system that's available to him. He's absolutely right, though. It takes 10 years to actually vest into the system, and at that point you're eligible to collect at some point. You could leave the city after 10 years and still collect at age 65, I believe. The amount that 62 at the amount that you have in there. There's several different things in the plans that allow you to leave at different times. And I think the other issue is bankruptcy. Public corporations can go, or private corporations can go bankrupt. Cities, although we've seen some starting to go into that, have never done that before, so it's a very different set of protections, as Scott said. Current pension design seems totally out of step with the pensions received by those of the private industry. Are you absolutely certain we have no legal recourse to roll back those amounts on current city employees? Well, I'm certain. I believe Councilmember Fry has a different opinion than I do, and so I'll ask her to come up and express her opinion. But we have not been successful in court to date, and we have tried. And the other part of the problem is when you lose the lawsuits, you lose the leverage. So there may have been ways to do this with some agreement, but after you lose the lawsuits, you have zero leverage, because what do? Go to the union and say, we really mean it this time? That's been one of our problems, but I still think we can solve the drop and the purchase of service credits issues.
Right, and I think the difference is that after many years of dealing with the San Diego City Employees Retirement System, their board and particularly their executive director, it's been very clear to me that a couple of the problems were based on the pricing that was actually put in place by the San Diego City Employees Retirement System, and that specifically relates to the purchase of service credits. That was not done by the City Council. The San Diego City Employees Retirement System knew full well that the value of the benefits was underpriced as to what people would be receiving, and went on a mission and sent out letters to all the employees encouraging them to participate in that plan before the costs went up. It is my belief that can be addressed and should be addressed and can be addressed through the municipal code. I do not want to take benefits away from people, but at the same point in time, I don't think it's unreasonable to ask people to pay for the benefits that they receive. As far as the drop program, if you look at the municipal code, it clearly states that the drop program is supposed to be revenue neutral. It is my belief, and it's many others' belief, that that in fact is not the case. And because it is not the case, I think those numbers can be looked at. I think, actuaries can fight over, but the fact of the matter is that too, I believe, can be addressed through changes in the municipal code. The same thing with some other issues that I've talked to the retirement administrator about. But I do believe there are ways to do it. And again, I feel very bad to have to stand here tonight and say to my friends that I think that we really need to do something more than what this proposal is that's in front of us today. And I think we can do more. And I think that we really have to. There was a council meeting yesterday. And I really need to bring this up, but there was a city council meeting, and I asked the union representatives to tell me if they would, in fact, negotiate with the mayor's negotiation team on the ballot language. And both stood up and said no. Now, that's what they said, as far as that they would not negotiate on this ballot language, that they would, in fact, only negotiate on the memorandum of understanding. That's a problem, and that's one of the reasons why I'm here tonight.
Thank you. Blue-collar workers who jackhammer the streets, sling pipe, and climb down manholes cannot physically work longer and longer to get a decent retirement. They need some retirement before 60. How will you address this? Right now, if you're in the private sector, you got Social Security basically or a 401k. We're offering many of the same options. And they can retire they can leave city service and they keep their service credits. They just can't draw on that until they turn age 60. So I think that's the fundamental part. Now, there's another question in here that talks about Social Security, and that's what I'm going to have to turn over to Jay. My understanding is in the 70s, we were in Social Security. We also had a pension system, and in order to leave the pension system, Social Security, SPSP was created for the workers so that they could put a bank of money away to offset that should they leave city employment before they vested in the system. And that's one of the things that we have gotten rid of out of this proposal. The city employees are vested after 10 years, which means that they can keep that in a retirement system and it builds until age 60. I don't believe you can retire in the Social Security system until age 62 now at a reduced benefit, and I think we're doing just about the same thing. And others can disagree? Agree? Okay. In the event the city is unable to attract quality workers in the future, how will the city be able to recruit new employees within the next 12 years based on Proposition B restrictions? We can go back to the ballot and tell the public that we need to increase pension benefits because we're having trouble retaining or attracting workers. But I also think it's important for people to understand that it doesn't matter which pension system you're looking at in the government, they're in trouble. They've been underfunded, the costs have escalated, and we're starting to make choices on paying pension benefits or cutting services. And that's what it amounts to, and I think that providing a reasonable pension, which is, I think 83% is reasonable in the private sector's book by anybody here, and allowing our workers they get an extra 8.5% savings on their payroll, which means they can put that in a 401k or 457B and greatly enhance that also. So I think we're being very fair with this proposal. Didn't the Pension Reform Commission recommend infusing $600 million in pension obligation bonds, and why is the proposal only dealing with general members, not safety members? The Pension Reform Commission, I don't know if they recommended that or not. We did negotiate it with Local 127 and MEA that we would put $600 million in. Unfortunately, we have not been able to do that because the city attorney has refused to support that. And we can't move ahead with pension obligation bonds unless we get a city attorney sign off on that. It's simply not possible. We have put about $170 million in, or at that point we will, of money that we were able to leverage from the original money that was placed in the trust. We'll continue to do what we can, and we'll work through that issue as we come to it. But that's one of the issues that we have to face as we move forward. And why wasn't public safety put into it? There's a very competitive market for public safety, as we've seen nationwide, as we've seen statewide. We lost droves of police officers, and I don't want to take that chance with public safety, so we'll leave theirs the same as everybody else's in the state is, or basically the same. People are living 30 years longer, but with your proposed plan, you're only asking employees to work for 5 to 10 more years. Shouldn't you push retirement age to 70? I suppose we could have done that. What we were trying to do was we were trying to, as Council President Peters said, we're in a market where there are very similar retirement systems, and I think we're going to see many changes in that. I think you're going to see changes similar to what we're doing, but also we have to be able to keep people in the city and attract and retain people. And that's the reason we went down a road that we felt was fair to the taxpayers and fair to the employees and would help us retain that attractiveness. And that's the reason we didn't put 70 on there, but did push up the multipliers so that you don't incent people to leave early, which was what was happening before. It was more attractive to leave at age 55, get another career going, and retire with another pension than it was to stay to age 65. Please explain the fact, this is on the Social Security, and I just talked about that. Why are city employees' retirement benefits based on the last 3 to 5 years of employment and not an average of all years? Why should your retirement be as if you were mayor for 30 years? First of all, nobody could survive being mayor for 30 years. I think one of the things that's important is I didn't get back in the pension system when I came back to the city. I felt that that would be a conflict of interest as we start trying to move these issues through. I retired from the police department, so for the last 3 years, I have not been taking a city contribution or putting my contribution into the retirement system. I'll be locked into the police retirement I got for my years of service from there. So I'm not going to be a retirement for 30 years. The other part of it is we felt the last 3 years, once again, is more fair in terms of what we see in other pension systems. It also reduces the cost, but I still think it gives the employees a good benefit without reducing the attractiveness of the city once again. What, if any, post actions can be taken to reduce or reduce ongoing large pension costs? And I think we've talked about that. We have not been successful in court. We have not been successful in the labor arena. And I have no reason to believe that that's going to change dramatically anytime soon. But it's something that we will work on in terms of the drop in the purchase of service credits to try to either get those revenue neutral or not allow those anymore for current employees. But those are the only two changes that would affect any current employee. What is the state criteria for pensions? Jay? I'm taking your time about PERS. Well, okay, Jay, thank you. Jay, you're supposed to jump up and say, I got the answer right on the top of my head. There are different pension plans in PERS. We tried to reach right at the middle part of the PERS plans, I believe. Some of the PERS plans are richer if you pay more in. Some of the PERS plans are reduced costs if you pay less in. We tried to reach that middle point to retain the attractiveness to recruit employees and also to be fair about it. But with the PERS plan, there is no defined contribution piece to it. In our plan, there is. It's only a 1.25% for the employee and for the city, but we think that shares the risk, and we're also not asking cities, our employees, to become expert investors. We'll let CSRS do that with their pooled money, and we think that they'll get good results from that. And why does the proposal exclude city leaders and highest paid managers? It does not exclude the highest paid managers. Everybody in the city will be part of this if they're not sworn police or fire. It does exclude city council members because they have term limits. They can only be in the city for 8 years. So they're not going on to some giant retirement system. They're done after 8 years. And as I said, it doesn't affect me at all because I'm not part of it. Come on up, Scott. Pardon me? As a city employee, I'm counting on future city employees to be contributing their money into the pension plan. Their money is what I'll be using for my retirement. Won't the diminished monies affect the amount I'll be able to retire on? How is this not underfunding for current city employees? Jay?
Well, that isn't the case. I mean, obviously, we have two parts of our retirement payment that we make. One part for the unfunded liability, which means the portions where we haven't fully contributed in the past or earnings were below the assumed rate. But the other piece is what they call normal costs, which is what an employee earns during that year and that benefit. And those are fully funded. And they'll have two different rates for those who are under the current plan and then those who are future employees. This will not reduce the money available and or the benefit for employees who are under the current city, pension plan.
And I'd like to also be clear for the city employees in the audience. We have honored our obligation to current city employees, and we are honoring that obligation. We said we would provide a pension, and all of you that started, whenever you started, that promise is being honored. We're still paying out pensions to people who have left. We'll be paying your pension out, and I think we have kept that obligation. There are some who have said we could have gone into bankruptcy and avoided that. I didn't think that that was a fair, reasonable, or honorable thing to do. We were also doing it with city health care, our retirement health care. In the past, no money had been put away. We have started a city retirement health care fund with the state of California. And we're putting money in that into a trust to pay for current employees. New employees after 2005 are not guaranteed health care for the individual who retires because we simply can't afford that any longer. We are working right now to set up systems where they can put in pre-tax money into 401k type accounts to pay for that. But I want to be real clear. We have honored past obligations. We'll continue to do that, but we can't continue, in my estimation, the same types of pension obligations that we have in the past, and I don't think it's fair to the employees or to the public who's paying those bills, because we have to continue to cut services, and we can't give pay raises, which is where we've been stuck for quite some time now, because we're trying to honor all those obligations and still not cut services any more than that. I appreciate everybody being here. I don't know if either of you'd like to wrap up. Come on up.
One thing, because it's my cheerleading time. But I think one thing too that will probably be a benefit of this, potentially, and we haven't exactly talked about it, but I'll throw it out there. There's the current plan in the city of San Diego. It's actually in the municipal code, and it allows for employees, and generally it's management employees, non-union employees, and I want to be very clear on that, that after they retire, that they are allowed to receive the full payments from their 401A plans, which is essentially the retirement plan. But in addition to that, there is another plan. And again, this is primarily for people that are in management positions. And they are allowed to earn over what the Internal Revenue Service sets as a cap on how much people are allowed to earn from a retirement plan. And that kicks over into a second plan called the Preservation of Benefits Plan. Now, the Preservation of Benefits Plan is funded on an annual basis. We cannot sort of accrue money. Every year we have to come up, and I think this year it was probably over $1 million, which unfortunately, just those payments from that plan for the preservation of benefit plans for primarily management employees. I need to make that clear again. essentially will, if that is not dealt with, has a potential to impact the savings that we will see from this other plan, because it seems to be going up. I think we've got that under control. Certainly this new plan will do that, but we are still waiting for information from the retirement board to tell us whether or not the preservation of benefits plan that the city currently has received a private letter ruling from the Internal Revenue Service telling us about whether or not that plan is approved by them. So that is one plan that really is excessive, that really needs to be addressed, that does push these numbers up high, because when you see those 119% numbers, please understand that most of the people that are getting those types of salaries are not union employees. You need to understand that is generally management who are not covered by contracts. So a lot of those people are, well, drop with but a lot of the worst offenders, just so you understand, it is sort of equally been distributed. And no, I just want people to understand that it is not all, the problems are not all associated with the salaries negotiated as part of union contracts, that there are many employees that work for the city that are non-union and are making quite a bit of money and are receiving similar or more benefits. So I was glad to hear that, because I think someone had asked whether or not the people who were non-union and that were not covered by a union contract would be part of this plan, and I think the answer was yes, and I think that's reasonable and fair.
And with that, at 7 o'clock, I promise we get out of here on time. So thank you all very much for coming and for spending your evening with us. We'll be going to council next Tuesday to ask for the council vote on this, to get it put on the ballot in November, so voters can decide on the pension system they think is fair. Thank you very much.